the truth. We're going to start. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. We're going to start right now. If you're new to Ninja 9, we get together on a regular basis and we lift each other up. And we usually start with gratitudes. Joanne and Jason, that should sound familiar from yesterday, because when you start with gratitude and you start with positivity, you move yourself from victim to player. So there are all kinds of events going on in the world, and you can turn the news on and you can fall down a deep, dark rabbit hole, or you can decide you're going to control your mind and your life, the things you can control. And in Ninja, we do that with positivity and gratitude. So Laura is really, honestly, the greatest example. Yet last year, she had to overcome a huge health issue. And she did that. She focused on being healthy. She focused on being successful. She sold a ton of real estate. And she's sitting here living proof that it works to stay positive. So I'm going to ask you to move yourself into that player mentality and start with gratitude every day so that you can focus on the positive.
What is it?
Right now, as of today, these meetings are planned to be monthly, which will be the first Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. And the next meeting will be Thursday, February 4th at 9 a.m. And our topic for next month is going to be using our new listing consultation program that Ted Bidding and your senior management team have been working on. I'm really excited to roll it out to you. So we're just going to spend a whole hour together next week working on that and preparing you to win the listing every single time you're at bat. So I'm excited about that. Sign into Chatter if you think of it. Our Chatter is kind of a way of us communicating with each other. I put a poll on there on fall throughs to see how many people I could get respond. I only got 4 responses. One of them was mine. So sign into Chatter and look, and on that Chatter, it's going to ask you if you had a fall through in 2020, what caused it, and then any other comments that you want to make about that. So that's something to look at. The other thing we were going to talk about when we convened this morning is word of the year. Does anybody on the meeting have a word that they're focusing on this year?
Amy, it's Deborah.
Hey, Deborah.
I have a really weird one this year.
What is it?
Well, you're gonna laugh. It's Grandma Lois. I had a lot of I had a lot of respect for her, and I've always wanted to be like her. And my goal this year is to be professional as she was and follow in her footsteps. So that's my goal. I have her name up on my desk and her picture as a daily reminder that that is what I'm working toward.
What was the number one thing about Grandma Lois, Deb, that just, that really resonates with you?
She didn't give up. She never gave up. And she was a professional. She worked hard and she always overcame. She actually ended up dying of cancer, breast cancer.
Sorry to hear that.
But she fought it for, probably 15 or 20 years on and off.
Oh my gosh.
So,
oh my gosh.
Her strength really meant a lot, and I saw her strength, and so that's my word of the year.
Grandma Lois, here we
Grandma
come.
Lois.
And just a little side note on that, okay, is Deb, you want to emulate her in all the important ways, but then also be true to yourself too, because you bring a lot of gentleness, kindness, sensitivity. So don't not be Deb. Also, just another little thing is, Deb, you are very healthy and strong. So stay focused on that too. Focus on being Deb and adding the Grandma Lois positives in there too, because you are really special and important to us.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have a word for the year?
My word is, this is Laura. I want to be engaged. I want to stay engaged with, not kind of any part of the right time become just there. I want to be engaged and part of it, or more. I do that because I think I need to listen more than talk.
I love that. That's a really good word. It's a really positive word. It means commitment. It means dedication, and that's a beautiful word. Anybody else have a word of the year?
I do.
Joanne, what's your word?
Well, the word is expect, but it actually comes from a mantra. There was a guy named Wayne Dyer who passed a few years ago. He was pretty
I know Wayne
motivation.
Dyer.
Yeah, good motivational guru. That he said he had a plaque by his bed that he read every night and every morning, and it says, "I expect good things to happen." And I love that, and I've always done that. So I just pulled the word expect out. I expect this to be a great year for all of us.
It is going to be a great year, Joanne, and we're all overcomers. Thank you for sharing that. I love that you read that in the morning and then at night, because what you did is you just set yourself up to sleep, dreaming and fulfilling that, and
Yes.
then wake up and live it. And
Yes.
I think if you read not only Wayne Dyer, but Napoleon Hill, all the great motivational speakers, that is a great recipe for success. Thank you for sharing. Who else has a word of the day? Jan, what's yours?
Well, I don't know. Two words come to mind. The Lord gave me was gratitude, of course, which I try to do every day, but sometimes I get busy and forget. So I've been trying to do better about that each morning. And then also confidence. Now, believe it or not,
Ooh.
that is something that Steve will tell you that I wrestle with, but I'm going to be better about having confidence in myself. Because
we would not know that you lack confidence. We would not know that.
Well, I covered up pretty good, but but I'm going to be better about that because that's something I always have struggled with all my life. So I'm going to be, rest assured, I'm going to be better than ever.
Good.
Even though I had my best year ever, but I'm going to be better.
I know that you are the best person for the job. And if you go out and you have competition, if they settle for anybody other than Jan Zachary, they're getting second, third, or 10th best. So you got to believe that too. And I don't suffer as much from lack of confidence as I used to, but I used to tell myself something I learned in Sweat Hogs, Jan, and that is, if anyone can, I can. And boy, I just look at you and I see so much talent and so much ability. So hopefully you'll believe that. Anybody else have a word for the year that you're going to focus on this year?
I didn't have a word. I couldn't think of one word, but mine was a simple phrase, and that's just do it.
Just do it.
Do
Just
the
do what?
process. And that's what I'm thinking that I need to do, is just follow the process and it will bear the fruit.
If you do it, they will come. They will come for sure. And so, yeah, Bob, and I know you were falling back on Nike. You used that just do it to get yourself healthy, just like Laura did this year, and it worked. And so we now know just do it works for real estate, works for exercise and diet, and a strong 2021. Anybody else bring a word of the year for us today? Matt, you've got a word of the year. What's your word of the year?
My word of the year is positive, because I was in a giant funk all of 2020 and was kind of depressed. And so despite what happened yesterday, I'm staying positive.
Yeah, it's just listen to the news, give yourself 5 or 10 minutes and turn it off, guys, because we can't control the world. We can only control ourselves. So we're part of the solution if we can stay positive. Yeah, and rely on the big guy to help us out. So that's so important. Don't let yourself fall down that dark rabbit hole. My word for the year is light. The reason I picked that word is I tend to be too serious. My husband is the fun one. So I want to be a little more lighthearted, a little what I call easy breezy. Do my best, but maybe not, have my teeth clenched and my fists clenched, and just maybe easy breezy. And then also be a light to others. Our branding is a lighthouse. So we want to guide people, in the training department as well as in real estate in general. And I'd just like to be lighter, a little bit lighter, you know, I think that would work too. Bob, maybe I need to just do it. So that's my word for the year. I invite you to have a word for the year, something that will help you to stay focused on the single most important thing. And the single most important thing is you getting your head on right to be the confident overcomer that I know you are. So work on that. You can control yourself. Okay, so I do have a PowerPoint for us this morning. Let me tell you how this happened. You may not know this, but our company had record fall throughs in December. I think that happened because we're in such a unique environment right now. So I built a PowerPoint that I think will be helpful, but I'm also using you as my laboratory. So add in your beautiful stories and solutions from 2020, the way that you've overcome the fall through situation. And I'm going to build a really impactful presentation and submit it to the Real Estate Commission. And we've got Mike Wood popping on here today to talk with us because he wrote us a special Carpenter piece, which is called Verifying That Pre-Approval. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. Mike's going to pop on here in about 4 minutes and he's going to join us. But please share your stories and share your solutions. I'm going to go to share screen now and we'll take a look at this that I've prepared. And please, again, add to it. So I entitled this Getting to Closing Successfully. I was trying to stay in the positive mode, but just to clarify, of course, at the bottom, I had to write avoid fall throughs. So I think what I want to deal with today is what are our buyer and seller expectations and how can we prepare our buyers and sellers for success? Steve and I chatted a little bit about this before everybody got on the call. And I do feel like our expectations that our clients have are a big part of what we're dealing with this year. So if we do kind of the preparation work up front, maybe we can avoid some of those pitfalls. I put handle inspection issues on there because I think a lot of us are seeing those fall throughs occurring because of the inspection. But we've also had title problems, contingencies falling through, appraisal issues, financing. So share your ideas, share your stories. So I wanted to start off by saying, one of the big things we talk about in Ninja is we go slowly in the beginning so we can go fast later on. And this was revolutionary for me. Patrick Wilkins was one of my big mentors, and he used to teach a class on listing presentations. And he always said, a dog with a note in his mouth could show a house. I just never developed good skills at showing houses. In fact, I would kind of rush through the house if they didn't want to buy it and rush on to the next one. When I took Ninja, it just hit me upside the head with a 2x4. I had been doing it wrong for 20 years. If we slow down with our buyers in the very beginning and we do the buyer consultation that Ninja teaches us to do, and just like you said earlier, ask all the right questions, slow down and be engaged, I think is what you said, Laura, and really slow down with them. Have them come into the office, do our homework ahead of time, prepare them for the market that they're walking into, and then adjust accordingly. And one of the things Steve and I were talking about earlier is this market is not a market for an analytical. They are going to struggle. And I have had 2 buyers in 2020 tell me, one said, I do not want to be in a bidding war no matter what. He ended up buying an ugly house that nobody else wanted. And the other one said, I refuse to pay over list price for a house, or his words, I'm not going to pay more than it's worth. Though you have to adjust what you're doing if your buyer is saying those things to you. Because if you walk into a situation where they're bidding with 20 other people, they're going to freeze up on you. Anybody have a comment on that or an experience with that?
This is Laura. I think that's why I
Laura.
did engaged. I need to slow down. I think that was a real good part there, to slow down not be so in a hurry just to show them the house, but to know more about them, to get more of that relationship part of it will stop the fall throughs, I think.
I agree with you. And, Laura, the really greats, the big agents nationwide, they do this. They start with the buyer consultation in the office. You can even invite a lender to pop in and talk to them for a minute too, but just explain the whole process to them. Start in the office with the buyer questionnaire. Matt and I one time had a client in the office, and we just connected our computer to the big screen and we just walked them through the properties. You need to know what's motivating them, obviously. What is their personality type? One of the things Steve and I were talking about regarding personalities is, your results-oriented people, they're going to make decisions based on numbers and facts, or what I would call a rational decision. But your amiables and influentials, they make their decisions based on people and emotion. Well, the perfect decision is going to be rational and emotional. So we need to help people have that balance. That's our job, is to be their trusted advisor and their counselor. So what is motivating this move? And are all the people involved on the same page? We've been in situations where, they were kind of diametrically opposed, and trying to find one property, that's brand new and close to walking trails and shopping, that's on 10 acres, that's just not going to happen. So, how do you help everybody get on the same page motivationally? Do they understand the market that we're in? Thank you, Michelle. David Cavanagh's kind of loud. Do they understand the market? So again, this is our job. And one of the things that we do in Ninja is we're not only showing them the actives, we're showing them the pendings, we're showing them the active backup. Why do you think we would do that? What's the point?
I think it's just managing the buyer's expectations of what the market is.
And you can show them there, Steve, on the active backups and the pendings. What were the days on market? We might not know the actual sale price, but we can show them the list price. We can talk about, the fact that houses are selling that quickly, and when we're driving around and they see yard signs, they might think that's a property that's available to them that we're not showing them, when in fact, that property might be out of their price range, or it might be already pending. So one of the things we do in Ninja is we load the Carpenter app onto our buyers' phones and our phones, because the minute you pull into a neighborhood and they see a sign and it's not on the list of houses you're showing them, they're writing it down and they're trying to figure out why you're not showing it. If they've got the Carpenter app on their phone, you're going to alleviate that confusion, because they can see, oh, this one's pending. Oh, this one's 50,000 out of my price range. And you're going to build their confidence in you, and you're going to build their confidence in the process. So I think that's terribly important, that our buyers are clear about the other houses on the market. And then, do they see the average days on market and that the sold price is over list price? So I think we're showing them solds in that neighborhood. Matt and I had, it was a quite phenomenal situation. We sold our neighbor a house in North Harbor. He bought it on, I did the homework, July 3rd, 2019. He paid $240,000. He did nothing to the house, no updates, no changes of any kind. And then he contacted us in September of 2020 and said, I want to sell it. Well, we sold it it closed on October 17th for $300,000. Our neighbor made $60,000 in just a little over a year. I said 60,000. So, wow. I mean, that is something that I'm going to be showing all my buyers, because the property values are just going up based on, economics 101. The inventory isn't there, it drives price. Comments on going slowly so you can go fast later on. Anybody? Is anybody doing this? Is anybody getting their buyer into the office and starting with a meeting, a buyer consultation, before they jump in the car and start showing properties?
Well, I'll say something here lately. Of course, we, have to be careful getting together and all that, but I have been talking to them over the phone and prepping them
Okay. Okay.
what kind of market we have. I said it's highly competitive, and it's like some people just don't get it yet. That you got to be ready to go. So I've been trying to prep them on what the market's like right now. And then also when I am showing, I've been going slower, and that's something I learned off of Pat Wilkins too. That when we're showing a house, I bring out the things that they're looking for. And then also, I also go, I said, let's sit down here. How do you feel in this living room? Can you see yourself here? So I really have been trying to do better on that instead of rushing through the house like I did when I first started.
So to Jan's point and Laura's point, as real estate professionals understanding the market, we're picking up on the sense of urgency. And then we're maybe moving a little quickly because we don't want our buyer to lose the property. But we can take our time at that showing, and we can offer, some observation while we're there about what they told us was important to them and ask them how that house measures up. Matt and I use this dialogue. If you find an 85% perfect house, you should probably buy it, because there really are no perfect houses. And then if they say to us when we get back out to our cars, if they're saying, well, what would you give that house on a scale of 1 to 10? If they're saying 8.5 or 9, that might be them telling us, well, gosh, we want to write an offer on this. So I just feel like it's important that we slow down, even though we know it's an urgent situation and houses are going quickly. When we go fast, we're not necessarily giving people time to make both a rational and emotional decision. Yes, Kevin, will you unmute yourself so we can hear you?
Okay, there we go. Hey, so I love the idea of bringing buyers into the office. I don't do a good job with that, but one thing that I do, I usually bring a CMA with me just to show recent sales in the area and value expectations, and I also bring in a purchase agreement and all the other documents that would normally go with the offer, so that if it's not the one, I usually do walk through all the different steps of the PA, so it's not the first time. So when they're writing the offers, it's not the first time that they're seeing those little knobs and switches to turn. And I talk with them about some of the other options in terms of making their offer appealing, related to taxes, inspections, and all those types of fees. If they're really trying to to tip it over to make theirs the most appealing. So I try to go over that process early, and that's working so that when we find the home, it's not the first time that they're trying to figure out, what should they do and what are the right answers to some of those questions that they'll have to decide later.
I love that you're so prepared. And, getting back to rational and emotional decisions, I tend to be a little bit impulsive. I'll make quick decisions. So my husband's a good balance for me because he really thinks things through deeply. But if you've got the seller's disclosure for me, if there's a previous inspection, maybe there was a fall through and there's an inspection, and you help me with those rational parts, that will help me make a balanced decision. So what Kevin is doing is he's bringing it all there every time. He's expecting that, these people could fall in love with this house. So he's got strategies for them to win. He's got a purchase agreement. He's got the seller's disclosure, any other homework, the survey, anything he can find. So he's balancing the emotions with the rational. So this is kind of what you and I were talking about, Steve, the pressure cooker that we're in. We know the buyers in that, if they're in that hot market, in that sweet spot, they've lost a couple of houses because they've been in a multiple offer situation. They're frustrated. And you know what? Let's face it, they're frustrated with us too. They might know that we're not the cause of the problem, but they're not getting what they want. So we don't like that feeling that they're frustrated. And when we show them the house, they're feeling pressured. So what do people do when they're in a pressure situation? Well, they might jump emotionally before they're ready rationally. And what that's going to lead to is possible buyer's remorse. Your influentials are going to make fast decisions, sometimes
Oh.
without making that rational processing. And your analyticals and amiables might get cold feet later on at the inspection because they thought they were in love with the perfect house, and now they find out it's not perfect. So your job as the realtor is to keep that decision balanced. So let's go back to what Jan was saying. When you're at the showing, take your time. I know I've been in situations where, there have been people waiting at the door to get in as soon as we leave, and maybe even impatiently and letting us know that they're not very happy with us. Guess what? That's not your problem. Your problem is your client. So just take them through the house again before you leave and let them. I love the idea, Jan, of even, just slowing down and maybe even sitting down and processing. These were the 3 things that were most important to you. These were the 3 things that were important to the other person. How does this house measure up on a scale of 1 to 10? What would you give this, with 10 being the highest? Maybe even make a pros and cons list. Help them look at the house rationally. Do you see that the shingles on the roof are demineralizing? Is there a reverse grade? Is there water in the basement? Just things that they might not see. So do your homework before you get there and share it with the buyers. And then I love this verbiage too. If you woke up tomorrow and this house was gone, would you be okay with that? I think you want to be careful. I don't think buyers like us to pressure them, but maybe just help them to realistically deal with the fact that the houses are going quickly. Anybody want to comment or add to this?
I like, Amy, this is Dave. I like number 7 a lot, and I use a version of that frequently. I will ask, the way I put it, I say, so tell me, if you wait too long and somebody else buys it, are you going to go jump off the New York Street Bridge downtown tomorrow? That's the way I always put it. And we all kind of chuckle. It's kind of a chuckle moment, that kind of thing. But we use that a lot because, it might be gone before 9 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, that's so true. And so let's throw everything we have at it if this is the one. And I like that. Larry Kendall tells a story about this in his book. Look it up. It's I'll never forget it, because they were his best friends. And before he put them in the car, they made him promise that he would not pressure them. And they looked at the house of a lifetime, fell in love with it, and they said, we want to sleep on it. Well, they called him the next morning. They said, we didn't sleep at all. We have to have that house. That is our dream home. And by the time they got the offer put together, the house was under contract. And then imagine their surprise when her boss invited them to his Christmas party and it was in their dream house. So every single Christmas for 20 years, she's been standing in her dream house that she didn't get to buy. So they call Larry every year and say, Larry, guess where we are? We're in our dream house that we didn't get to buy. So, you don't want people to be in that situation. I like to tell people this just to take a little bit of the pressure off. Things usually turn out exactly the way they are supposed to. And just for them to know that, okay, yeah, we didn't get this one, but we did our very best. We learned some things along the way, and there's a better house out there for you. And I just believe that. I've seen it so many times where people end up saying, you know what, I'm glad it turned out exactly the way it did. So this is a really important one. Matt and I had a weird situation back in October where we had a fall through. I'll get to talk with you more when we get Mike talking about what happened there. And the house was going back on the market on Sunday after the open house. I had 2 agents call me and write offers before they saw the house, both of them. But the one agent in particular said to me, I'm going to write you the perfect offer. Tell me what that is. You've got the magic wand. What would your seller's perfect offer look like? And then he called me back and said, what about this? What about that? He literally tailor wrote an offer subject to them getting to see the house at the open house between 1 and 1:30. And guess what? They got the house because he made that phone call. The other agent, and Matt, you can chime in on this, the other agent who wrote the offer sight unseen, she was furious, but her offer wasn't competitive with his because she didn't even bother to ask what was important to our seller. Our seller wasn't interested in top dollar. Our seller was interested in closing on the house he was buying on time. That was his big deal. Matt, you want to weigh in on that? Do you have anything you want to add to that, how that came down?
Well, if you remember, we had an open house. I had an open house. And because both of those offers were subject to them viewing the home at the open house to make sure they liked it. And then they could withdraw their offer if they didn't like it. So I had about 20 groups show up for that open house, a ranch in Fishers. And I figured out who the two groups were that were the two offers. And the one that was the best offer that we had told them that they were the ones we were going to go with contingent upon that buyer liking the house. And when they got done viewing it, they were like, okay, we like it. And so I had a document ready for them to sign, releasing the contingency of the subject to the viewing. And I had to turn around and tell everybody else standing in line on the driveway that the house was now pending. And so the other offer that came in early, they were there with their agent and they just started yelling at me right in the driveway. So it was pretty ugly, but it worked, and our seller did very well.
He was happy. We did put Matt in a really difficult situation that day. So, but gosh, I didn't know that we would get two offers sight unseen. That was kind of unusual. That's never happened before. So when you call that listing agent, partner with them. You know, what motivates your seller? It's not always price. Find out if there's already an offer on the table. How can we write the perfect offer? Back to your point, Kevin, how can we strategize and remove as many contingencies as is safe for the buyer? What does that look like? In this particular case, we already had an inspection. We had already made all the repairs. We posted all that information on the BLC. So anybody looking at the house would have seen the inspection, would have seen the repairs that we made. So of course, our guy who wrote the offer, he didn't make it subject to an inspection. They relied upon the previous inspection. And form an alliance with the other agent, such as this was actually a Tucker agent. And he said, I'm going to make this a seamless, perfect transaction for you and write you the perfect offer. Well, gosh, I like that. You know, it sounds pretty good. So Kevin, let's go back to what you were saying. How few contingencies can we write in this situation? Can they buy it without selling their home? Assure the other agent that you want to work with them to provide a dream transaction. And I'm going to get to you. I think you're on there, aren't you, Mike Wood?
I am.
Get the strongest pre-approval letter possible. And we're going to jump over to you here in just a second. I love this one, Mike, and I'm going to ask you right now. Will your loan officers call the list agent and tell them how strong the buyer is? Are they able to do that?
There are certain aspects that we can share and tell them how strong the buyer is. We have to have consent from the buyer and the buyer's agent is the way we look at it, because we don't want to share anything that could obviously put your negotiations in, we don't want to overstep our bounds either. But there are some privacy issues of certain things we can't say. But as far as saying, hey, this is a rock solid buyer, and answering some of those things, which we can, when we go through that, I'll get to. But yes, there's definitely some things we can do to back you up.
So all pre-approvals are not created equal. Matt and I think we knew this, but boy, did we get smacked upside the head on this one. Here we were in our first go round with the seller in a multiple offer situation. And our seller, we did an Excel spreadsheet for him to compare the offers. We did net sheets for every single offer that we received. And you're going to like this about him. He wanted to pick the veteran. That mattered to him. And guess what? It's his house. It's his decision. That pre-approval letter, Mike Wood, was not worth the paper it was written on. Because we found out later on that veteran, when she left the military in August, she was no longer going to qualify for the house. So we, are bad. We've got the seller, but we didn't know that. And obviously the paper that it was written on, it just wasn't even worth it. So Mike, I'm going to change screens here and I'm going to pull up this document that you provided for us. And I'd like you to kind of walk us through, if you will. So hold on, let me find it. I'm going to do a new share screen here. And let's see, where do I have it? I think this is, whoops, hold on. Just a sec. Oops. Technical difficulties. Give me a break, Carol. Get it.
While you're doing that, Amy, can I squeeze in a comment?
Would you, Kevin?
Yeah. So another thing that I do when I'm really trying to amp up the offer, I've created a document that it's not like a a legal document, but it's a statement of understanding that I have my buyer sign. It talks about, really just kind of expands upon the purchase agreement in terms of expectations on inspections and what the Indiana law states. And it goes kind of through talking about how basically we're not going to nitpick on the inspections, and that this is the buyer's understanding of what that process means. So while it doesn't really carry any legal weight, they can still ask to have all the, but it's basically saying up front, I've talked with my agent has prepared me to really look for only those major significant things. And for whatever weight it brings, it does state that these buyers have been counseled on what an appropriate inspection response would be, so that hopefully the sellers would feel a little bit more inclined to work with my buyers if they're looking at possible concerns with inspections.
I love that. That's really powerful, and that's brand new. And I'm going to add that right on in here to the PowerPoint. But Kevin, I promise I'll always tell everybody it came from you. Hey, can I ask you, do you all see my screen? Can you see the top questions to ask and consider? Did I successfully?
I don't see it.
You don't see it. All right. Thank you,
No.
Matt. I
Hey,
can
and
always count on my husband.
while you're doing that, I had a comment too. One of the things that I've seen a lot of with representing a buyer with a competitive home is to let the buyer know, hey, you may want to write your very, very best offer the first time, because a lot of times buyers might be like, hey, maybe they'll ask for highest and best. So let's write a full price offer, but I'm sure with all these people, they're going to be asking for highest and best. Well, guess what? Maybe somebody already submitted the highest and best in the seller's eyes, and they don't want to go down that road of throwing them all back. So my feeling is, with communicating with that seller's agent and getting all the bells and whistles in there that you can, go at them full strength the first time, and maybe they won't be throwing it back.
Yeah, we don't have to go highest and best. If we've got a cash offer non-contingent, we'll just pick up the phone and call that agent and say, hey, our highest offer price-wise was $5,000 more than yours, but your cash non-contingent will take yours if you'll go to, $350. I don't have to do highest and best, but I've had agents call me and scream at me because we didn't go highest and best. Guess what? Not my call. That's the seller's call. So Mike, you're up. I think I've got it on the screen, don't I?
I can see it.
Yay.
Yep.
Okay. This,
So,
everybody, is Mike Wood from Bailey and Wood.
I appreciate your guys' time as well. And let me just say, first off, I've been on the call since the beginning and listening to your guys' words, and you got some lot of dialed in people, and it's really good to hear your guys' perspective. And that was good for me to hear, because there's a lot of things that correlate between what you guys do on a daily basis and what we do. So in terms of the motivation and the 2020 and it being crazy and what we've all went through, obviously it's one heck of a crazy market, but we're all pulling through. So the biggest thing when, I was talking with Amy, and from a listing agent, when we get asked all the time, pre-approval, pre-qualification, what's the difference? Why do I hate them? Because I can tell you as a lender, I hate these, because there is no such thing as a pre-approval or a pre-qualification. You're either approved, conditionally approved, or you're not yet. A pre-qualification or pre-approval, however you want to bind them together, is nothing more than an opinion of a loan officer who says, hey, I like what I've seen so far, and this person looks good. So why is it that is important from a listing agent if you're looking and comparing offers? Because there's a lot of factors that come into play. for one, who's making the decision? So from a listing agent side of things, if I'm going to try to determine where I'm going through, and these aren't in very particular order, but just going down the list here, do you have all the income documentation needed to make the decision on hand? And has this information been reviewed on underwriting, or is it, a loan officer's, determination of where we're at? Because I can tell you, we've all been there, and there's all the 800 score borrowers just lay down. We know that I'm friends with this guy's friend. He's got so much money. We all hear those things, but then we all have the horror stories that guy quit his job. And once we verified this wasn't happening, or, hey, I got pay stubs and he's got garnishments, or there's so many things, there's so many different factors that can go into play. So the biggest thing as far as that, asking who has reviewed. If you haven't reviewed pay stubs, you don't have W-2s, how can you honestly make a decision this person is golden and good to go? You can't, is the easy answer. But we have certain agents, that are in the area that will call up a loan officer. It's Saturday night at 7:30 at night, and says, hey, this so-and-so is going to go. We're going to see this house in the morning. There's like 4 people on it. I need a pre-approval letter right now. So that happens every single day, to where it's saying, hey, this is good based on what they're telling me, which is great, but that is not confirmed. So some of those factors, when you're deciding if you've got a hot property, especially in this market, is, are you dealing with a buyer that has taken those initial steps? And it shows the severity or the seriousness of the buyer. Have they got their pay stubs and everything turned in quickly? If a buyer is that, on fire to put that offer in right that minute, they can also get on their computer in today's technology world, ADP apps or whatever, and send a pay stub and W-2 in about 2 seconds. So that's the severity, whether you're a buyer's agent or a listing agent, that is more important than just about anything, is getting that documentation in, because otherwise you are trusting someone's judgment. And when you're dealing with this market, it doesn't matter how good the loan officer is. It doesn't matter until you can sit here. I'll give you a perfect nightmare example. I was doing a loan for my uncle, a family member that I have known obviously my whole life. And he left out that really important fact that his company took him from W-2 to 1099. He told me exactly what it was. I gave him a pre-approval letter like a fool on a Saturday night. This is a few years back. Said, hey, okay, no problem. Uncle Randy, here you go. And I got burnt, because the next morning after he put the offer in that night and they got their offer in, he walks into my office and says, oh, I forgot to tell you. Yeah, we went to that. You know how awesome that phone call was to the real estate agent? Say, hey, on Saturday night, you took time away from your family. You wrote this offer and you got it all excited. Everybody's fired up. The next morning, this guy can't buy a loaf of bread right now because he just went self-employed. So as loan officers, they're in a really tough pickle in a position, because the last thing any loan officer wants to do when they get a phone call from a real estate agent is tell you guys no. But that's more important. When I talk to my loan officers, that's more important than the yeses, because when you guys are taking out time and you're doing those things, you have to weed through that. But that's the very first question at the gate, and it's probably the most important thing in terms of have they reviewed that. One thing too, and when it comes to, can you confirm the financing type for sure? There's a lot of tricks of the trade that you can see, and I'm not saying anything bad against Indiana housing down payment programs or anything along those, but if someone just submits an FHA offer or a conventional, because there is Indiana housing conventional offers too, that have those, they have their own extended timelines. There's USDA, there's certain factors in there. So from a listing agent perspective, not all FHA offers are equal. Not all conventional offers are equal. So it's one of those things when you're looking at it and you're asking them specifically, hey, okay, is this an FHA? You are within your rights to ask them, is this FHA Indiana housing? Is there any down payments required, or is this straight? Because that's a really good thing. Because if I had 3, FHA offers directly, or I've got a conventional 2 conventional offers, and one of them happens to be Indiana housing, there are certain things with that loan that Indiana housing looks at that a conventional loan or just a regular FHA to FHA housing, there are different factors in their play in terms of debt ratios, other factors that could pull up the deal later on. Not to mention they look at the properties differently. So there are factors in there. So I think it's really key from a listing agent to be able to compare apples to apples, because if you had the exact same offer and they all said exactly the same, but one of them was, again, not saying anything bad about down payment issues, but that gives you your educational part of it to know that, okay, maybe this one could go smoother. And that would give you full ammo to present to your sellers the best possible options.
So Mike, are you guys allowed to answer these questions? I mean, what about the Privacy Act? Are we
You are
violating
only
that?
allowed to answer questions specifically, like I can answer what type of financing. I can answer if I have income. I cannot talk to you about the income. So if you said, as an agent, you said, hey, do you have the income? So I've seen a few others. You can't ask them if they're self-employed. I can't answer that question for you. So if you call and say, hey, they're 1099, self-employed, or the W-2, I can't share that with you. Unless the buyer gave us permission to share that information. I can't share with you credit scores. You can't call and ask, hey, you know, this borrower got a really good credit score? You know, that a lender should never answer that question. Now,
So back to Kevin's point, could I say to my buyer, would you please give Mike permission to share anything that you're comfortable with the listing agent? And if my buyer calls you and says, you can tell them my credit score, you can tell them that I'm not self-employed, then would you be able to call the listing agent and pitch our buyer?
absolutely.
All right.
You can
Why
absolutely
wouldn't we do that?
All it takes is the buyer send us an email, as we'll ask them to put it in writing, of course, just to say, send me an email or a text that we can put in the file, just saying that you give us permission to share the details of that. So yes, I mean, if it's a competitive situation and, you know, they've got really good scores and maybe they're putting extra money down, there's not gifts, they've got the money, they've got those things, and they want us to help them better their position, we can do that with their blessing.
Great. So that's a strategy we need to add to our repertoire.
Yeah. And one of those things, keep going along down number 3. Have you ran the pre-approval specific to the terms of their offer made, correct down payment, including taxes, insurance, and HOA fees? The reason why that is so important is if I'm talking, to Mr. Dave Dance, who just looks great today, if I'm talking to him and he wants to get a loan and we're sitting here and I run the pre-approval and he's going conventional and he's all good to go, that's great and all, but then if he flips it to FHA after, which happens a lot, people switch because maybe, hey, mom and dad were giving me 10% to put down. Now they kind of backed out. I can only have this, so I only want to put down FHA. Have those findings, are they specific? Correct taxes. HOAs are a hot topic because, especially if you're doing any condos, because dealing with them right now are just, it's just a real fun thing we got going on, but making sure those are factors that go into the debt to income ratio. So just because we're saying someone qualifies, do we have can we back up exactly what we're talking about here? Meaning that, hey, on this specific property, I know from every agent's different. So when you're talking pre-approval letters, some agents want the offer letter, the offer price on the letter. They want to show the exact program. They want it all dialed in, and that's fine. And loan officers can absolutely do that for you to make sure that answers that question. But if it's just a generic letter saying, hey, they're approved for a conventional loan and we're good to go, does that include that? So that's one of those great questions you can ask a loan officer for sure. This one's always kind of, people may take offense to it. I've heard agents tell me that a loan officer or a lender would get upset by asking this. And if it is, it always cracks me up because for a lender, we're here to serve not just the buyer, but we're here to serve a real estate agent because you guys, let's be honest, 90% of the time are trusting us with your paycheck. That's the way we view it. Hey, I'm giving you a buyer. I'm basically saying, hey, Mike, here's a paycheck. But I need you to take care of that before I can get paid. I'll get the buyer in. So one of the questions, how long have you been doing mortgages? What is your standard turn times? Think about it. You're interviewing. If you see a pre-approval letter that maybe if you don't know it's somebody that you regularly work with, there's nothing wrong with calling that, because think about if you're interviewing a buyer, do they not ask you as an agent how long you've been doing real estate? They want to feel comfortable with you, correct? So there's nothing wrong from doing that, because the reason why that comes into play is if you do get a pre-approval that maybe and you get that feeling of, hey, this person's a brand new into the industry, that doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing, but who else has looked at this? So if you're comparing apples to apples and you have a pre-approval from a guy that works at a bank that's been doing it for 40 years, that you've done plenty of transaction work, that's good. And another one from a brand new loan officer at some place that maybe you haven't heard a whole lot about, those are questions. Those are also things I would ask. And, you know, just like with interviews, go on Facebook, go on Google. If you're trying to compare apples to apples, see if what the reviews and what those clients are saying about those individuals or the company that are giving you the pre-approval. Though, you know, buyers can give you the feedback there. And that's also something that definitely you can definitely ask and interrogate there for a little bit. The pre-approval, confirm if the pre-approval is contingent upon a sale of a home buyer's existence residence. I can't tell you how many times, I don't know how to say this, and I will tell you this, it's not ever been a carpenter agent, so kudos to you, but I can't tell you how many times I've been asked, or I have an LO saying, an agent's telling me not to do this, even though it's contingent, because they want to get the offer in and then change it after the offer is accepted.
Oh, wow. Oh,
That is a
wow.
practice that there's a certain company with the same colors as you guys that they literally do that quite often. So
Wow.
I'll let you figure that one out, but I'm saying like there is a situation, and you're gonna have to edit that because I know you're gonna send this to the commission or whatever. So don't
I am not, I promise.
take that part
Any
out of
good
it.
thing you have to say about Carpenter, I'm gonna save it.
But from a standpoint that is something that you can't, that there's games definitely played. That's something I would definitely ask, especially if the buyer, if you got a multiple, I'd definitely ask. Have you ever verified funds needed for closing? That's always a key because again, it changes constantly. If I'm a listing agent, if there's a down payment or if it's, and to be honest with you, the 20 to 30% downs generally are, obviously, I know it comes as a shock, are the easier ones that the funds are there. It's generally the ones that are the 3.5% or maybe getting gifts from mom or dad, you know, have those been verified, because that's something that can come up, change, or really cause issues.
Hey, Mike, can I jump in for real quick?
Absolutely.
That is a great question, the one you just posed, sourcing that cash. And it's not only for when you have a listing and you're trying to verify the qualifications of the buyer. That is a great question for our own buyers. I've never really been particularly strong with that, but we've had more than one instance recently. You know, we like to believe our buyers, and they've got $8,000 in the bank, or their dad will write the check or whatever. And we've been fooled on that and let down on that. And I think that's a fabulous question that we need to ask our own buyers. I'm starting to get to the point where I want to see the bank statement, just like, the underwriter does. I got better things to do than show houses to people that can't buy houses. And that's where I'm finding my own buyers. Sometimes they're a little overly optimistic about how much cash they have or can get.
Or what I think is even more common to that, or, hey, it's coming, I'm getting the money, but where's that money coming from? Oh, I'm selling a car. Or I'm getting, around this time of the year, it happens every time. Oh, my mom and dad give me a certain amount of cash for Christmas. Well,
or I've got it in a 401k. Well, you know what? 401ks don't necessarily distribute very quickly. And I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry. I just think that's a great question.
No, and that is one of those things that, depending upon which loan program, it's very tedious. Now, I do want to throw you a bone here, because we haven't even released this yet, but Fannie just came out in terms of funds, which is going to be huge. Fannie just released a new guidance on this, that now gift funds can be used for reserves. So if a client needs a couple months reserves to qualify for a loan, which some of the trends in, they will actually let mom, dad, or anybody give them cash and it be treated as reserves. That is a huge factor that will help some approvals for sure. Okay. So this is another big one. Where is your processing or underwriting located? Are they in the same building as you, the same state? The reason why that's key, now obviously, not to try to turn into a sales pitch, but there's a huge difference that everybody's saying, use a local lender, use a national lender. There's good national lenders, there's good banks, there's good mortgage lenders. So you can have this, but for me, from what I've seen, here's the reason why this is crucial. Are they walking across the hall? Is it a face-to-face conversation with the underwriter, or are you getting a piecemeal, an email to North Carolina, to Ohio, to Michigan? Where are they located at? Where are the decision makers located at through the decision? Because if anything does go sideways, or there's an issue on an appraisal or income, something different change, how are those conversations taking place? Because as you know, you guys have been doing business long enough. If you could never meet your buyer or your seller and you had to do nothing but just go over through an email, there's going to be things that are lost in translation. Not only that, but there's going to be a delay. You're waiting on that. And dealing with that, hey, where's the company at? Where can I talk? If I have a problem, if the loan officer quit tomorrow, what happens to your loan? Who's going to take over it? Is it going to take over from somebody in Ohio or Michigan or Las Vegas? Or is it somebody right there locally, same number? Can I call and handle that? So those are huge factors, and also helps the speed. If ever the decision is underneath one roof. How soon, sorry, I got my little thing here covered. How soon does the company wire necessary funds, closing docs? Has anybody ever showed up to a closing and the funds weren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every day.
That is a gigantic one that I speak for our company. We wire 24 hours in advance. The reason we do that, we over wire by $1,000. The reason why we do that is because if anything changes within that threshold, some title companies hate us for it. I'll be completely honest with you, because it means they have to send us money back if we overfunded, but the money's always there. That would be one thing that when you're looking through the process and you're talking about it, just to make sure, because there are some companies or on the brokerage side of things, the way the business is done, that they have to request that wire after they're clear to close. They have to request that wire from the lender they're using as a broker side and send them the docs from closings, which then delays the wire, delays funds. So that could possibly throw hinders in it. Probably the hottest topic, who handles your appraisal ordering process? Do you use an outside AMC? Do you own your own? The reason why this is completely crucial is because think about it. You could have the best borrower in the world. You could have the perfect purchase agreement. Everything's done. Inspections are smooth. And I'm sure everybody's going to, raise their hand or say it or whatever. But then you have an appraiser who knocks your appraisal that you've had 15 offers on by 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, and it comes in short. What people don't understand is when AMC guidelines came down, meaning that AMC's appraisal management company, as a lender back in the day, we were allowed to call the appraisers directly and say, hey, I've got this purchase agreement. Here's what I need on the value. Here it is. I'm sending this over. And if they said they couldn't get it, we'd send it to the next appraiser. Those days obviously are gone after the crash and everything there. So they put in AMC's place to put it in. They actually control the appraisal process. There are certain companies, us and a few others that have it, that basically own their AMC. Why is that important? If you own your AMC, your automated appraisal management company, it is a list of local appraisers. You're not going to get somebody from Bloomington coming up to Brownsburg to appraise a property. You're not going to get Fishers going to Greenwood or, Whiteland up to Noblesville. You're going to get somebody local that should know that particular area, which hopefully helps your guys' cause of make sure that you're staying with that. Not to mention, if you do have a short appraisal or you do have anything that is part of the process that is going to come up, that if there's a small minor repair that an appraiser is being stickler on, who's having those conversations? If we're dealing with the same people and you're dealing with the same appraisers, the same company, and you've got control of that, obviously those conversations are easier, they're quicker, and they're more maneuverable. For us, the biggest thing is we own the AMC. It is not a moneymaker, meaning that what you will see, just to be very frank, is the way AMCs make money, and there are some, there's StreetLinks, there's other major people, and they all do a great job. But what they do is they get paid a management fee, and then they take part of the appraiser's fee as well. So you see now appraisal fees being jacked up into the 500s and 600s on some things. Ours are right around 450 to 470. The reason why that's crucial is our appraisers get all of their money. We don't take anything from them. So
wow.
For our standpoint, and there are other people that do this. This isn't just something specific for us, but there are other people who do that. The reason why that's important when you're talking to them and they figure out who it is. Well, if you're an appraiser, let's say Kevin's an appraiser and he's got 10 appraisal orders on his desk. Out of those 10, 5 of them, he's getting his full pay for doing the same amount of work at $500 a pop, and 5 of them he's getting $250. Who do you think's getting done first? I mean, if he's a smart business guy, he's going to knock out the ones that are paying him more, that are going to take care of it, and he's going to do that. So there's factors there, all of that across the board there, that you want to take into play. But that is a huge one for you guys when you're looking at it from a listing side of knowing, am I going to get a local appraiser? How are those ordered? Are they ordered immediately? Are you following the purchase agreement? That process, those particular things completely are all within your rights as listing agent, and you should be questioning that.
So Mike, just to, free you up to have your productive day,
Yep.
there's another topic I wanted you to help us with, and
Mhm.
that is the actual appraisal process. So what happens if the appraisal comes back short? What can we do? What are our what are some things we can do in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, that I can tell you right now is 100%. There's so much misinformation out there when it comes to the appraisal process and what you're allowed to do. So the biggest thing is the appraisal is the borrower's. So this is the hiccup. So it is owned by the buyer of the property. If the buyer's on board, you can do just about anything you want. Meaning, if the appraisal came in and let's say it's $5,000 short, if it's a conventional appraisal, it is ran through what's called an SSR, which basically Fannie and Freddie now are all going to computers. You're taking a lot of human element out, which is good and bad. But if the SSR, they literally pull up a report when they appraisal, it pulls up every comp, which are bad comps, good comps, meaning that there could be foreclosures in there. It's pulling up every similar home in a geographical area and it lists it on a report. And if enough comps of this report were used in the appraisal, they grade it from 1 to 5. The lower the score, the better you are, because it's considered risk. If you're in there, if anything that's over a 4 is considered high risk, if it came in short, we've had appraisals that come in and that it will grade even at a 3 or a 4, but they're not using some of the best ones. We had one that came in $1,500 short yesterday. We make a call to the appraiser, he missed a comp, and now it came in 3,000 high. So these reports really are catching things that, as the appraisers are buried, just like everybody right now, they're human, they're going to make mistakes. Now, the biggest thing is if it's FHA appraisal and VA, those follow the property, they're logged. So now conventional going with Fannie and Freddie, they run the SSR, those SSR reports are also logged. Now, that doesn't mean you can't order new appraisals or, there's always used to be a game, I'll switch it over to this lender, I'll order a new appraisal, we'll try to get that. What I can tell you is the best thing you can do, whether you're on the listing or buyer side, if you know that's one that's highly competitive, get to the loan officer, get to us, give us every piece of ammo you have, because regardless what it may seem, appraisers will take that info. I've never had an appraiser on our panel or whatever. They don't like being told they're wrong, but we're all been wrong. I don't like being told I'm wrong. My wife tells me every day, and Lord be it, I'm wrong. So I get it, but the relationships with these people, you absolutely positively can question everything. You're well within your rights, but it has to be channeled through the buyer. Meaning that, so from a listing side, if you had one that came through 5,000 short, that's a conversation with the buyer's agent. Say, listen, here's the ammo. We've got this. All it has to be done is, and you could literally type up the email as the agent. The buyer just has to forward me that email and say, here's my rebuttal. I want to do this. And I can take that info, anything you provide, I can take that info and go right to it and fight it.
Oh,
But it
that's
has to
beautiful.
be coming from the buyer. And that's a legal issue, because what happens is if we didn't go through that and we provided a buyer that was 5,000 light on appraisal, and, I'm talking to Kevin and we get the, he sends me comps and he's well within his right, and we get an elevated appraisal now at the purchase price, that buyer has delivered the one that's lower. And then now we're coming back to him with one that's higher without having him in the process. We can be sued, obviously, and, pushed on that. And in today's market, everybody wants to sue for any reason possible. So that's the only thing there when you're dealing with the appraisal portion, is just having the buyer and the buyer's agent on board.
So we would provide our additional information to the buyer can forward it to you, and you're well within your rights to send that back to the appraiser.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Now, I will say
Perfect.
this, you don't have to go through all the, I mean, if you're short 1,000 or 2, or there's something egregious, our underwriters, when they run the SSRs and they see it, and we can find, if there's something that we can see from a lender side that's blatantly obvious and we don't need your help to try to go back, we can do that without everybody going through the process, because we don't deliver that appraisal until after it goes through the SSR and the underwriting portion. So if from a lender standpoint, if it comes in 2,000 short, I like to call the agents, just to be very frank, and I'm saying, hey, I'm working on this. I just want you to know it is back. That way, but we're trying to get something corrected, I'll let you know then at that point if we need you, but we try to correct it before it ever goes out.
That's really great. And I know how important it is to have local underwriting because you guys have helped me out with some weird situations that we needed immediate underwriting on, and it really does help. So, well, Mike, thank you for sharing with us. Mike, I'm going to let you go. Does anybody have any questions for Mike before he gets off our Zoom today?
Amy, I do.
Yes, Loris.
If we write offers that guarantee a certain amount over appraisal, what parameters do the lenders allow? Is it okay with a 20% down? Can you kind of expand on that, Mike?
Yeah, so let's just, for math purposes, let's say you've got a $100,000 home and they go over by 115,000 to get the house. They pay over 15,000. For us, from a lender perspective, the only thing that changes is our loan to value is still calculated off the lower of the two, meaning the purchase price. So let's say the appraisal came in at 100 and not 115. So that person would then have to have the cash, the extra 15 on hand for themselves. That would not be a part of our loan equation. Does that make sense?
So instead of 20% down, it would just change the loan to value.
Well, it could be 35% in that part, because basically if you're the 15,000 extra above, so if you wrote a purchase agreement for 115, appraisal comes in at 100, list price was 100. So let's say the home is exactly worth 100,000 and they don't want to have MI, they're putting their 20% down, so $20,000. Our loan amount would be $80,000. They would have to bring the extra 15 to make the loan amount still $80,000, because we wouldn't be allowed to then finance above and beyond what the appraisal is going to dictate as far as the value.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, I have a question, Mike. I think I've seen that list. There was a list of those questions distributed a month ago or so. Maybe that came from you. I can't find it. Can you?
Yeah, we did one for Tom was doing a training on the south side, but I can email it to you if you want.
Yeah, if you could push that out, I'm sure there's people on here would also appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Dave, I've got it and I'm going to send it to everybody.
Okay, there you go.
And I think it's a really helpful piece, to your point, Dave, not just when we get offers, but also when we're working with our buyers. Just keep in mind that all pre-approvals or approvals are not created equal, and all lenders are not created equal. Mike, thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
I'm so sorry. I just meant
No, go ahead.
Imagine using that list for your buyer and posing those questions to your lender and having that written up and included in your offer.
Wow, that'd be impactful.
Pretty powerful.
The last thing I will leave you with is, especially for some, if that underwriter has seen it, have them give you a conditional approval, not a pre-approval. Imagine your offer to a seller when you can say they've already been through underwriting and an underwriter's already signed off on their income.
Good idea.
So that's my part of it. You can actually get, and that is something as a lender, again, a buyer is going to want to give you permission for that. We can actually give you a copy of the conditional approval showing an underwriter's signature on it, straight up showing that they've already been through underwriting and approved.
Good idea.
And that tightens up the closing time too. So in the situation for our seller, where his primary concern was, look, I have a fall through, I'm supposed to close on my new house in 3 weeks. Well, that buyer that agent brought us was, with somebody like Bailey and Wood that said, hey, I can turn this in 20 days, let's go. And that was a big factor in that acceptance. So thank you, Mike. We appreciate you.
Thanks,
Mike Wood,
appreciate
Bailey
it.
and Wood, take care.
Have a good one.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you. Okay. I've got a couple more things for us to look at here. My PowerPoint, again, please add your good ideas. The warranty. One of the things that we've been doing with these warranties is ordering them right away and putting the seller on there too. And the reason we're doing that is it could potentially cover the seller for some inspection issues, and that can make a difference when you get to the inspection phase. So immediately upon acceptance, you control the warranty as the buyer's agent, get on there, enroll the seller and the buyer, and then you can review that coverage at the time of inspection. Call Anne-Marie if you need help with it. But the big thing that it helps us with is nearing the end of its life expectancy. Those those words that come back to haunt us later on. But all the warranty needs to know is that it was working at the time of inspection. So what if the water heater's 15? It was working, it's under warranty, and we covered the seller on that, which is going to help you with pre-existing conditions after the closing and possibly help you with some of those inspection issues. Is anybody else doing that? Anybody?
David and I do.
Yeah, it's a
And if I
powerful.
have the seller, I actually order the warranty as soon as we have a listing agreement.
And Deb, you know what else? I'm ordering it even if the seller tells me they don't want it, because I can cancel it later on, and
Good
I have
point.
Anne-Marie's permission to do that. So if it happens that, and Matt will say, hey, these people aren't asking for the warranty, we'll cancel it. But when they do ask me for a warranty with XYZ warranty company, I can go back and say, well, they're already under contract. I've eliminated the pre-existing condition, possibly help the seller with inspection issues, and controlled the cost of the warranty. So, so far we've been able to do it. We haven't had to cancel it very many times. Maybe once in 2020 did we have to cancel it. So we're putting that warranty on there, even if the seller doesn't say they want it. Okay, so
Amy, let me
yes,
jump
Dave.
in. We actually have it written in further conditions on our listing agreements on our, what do you call it when you set them up in advance? I'm struggling for the right word. So when we pull up when we're going to do a listing, when we're filling it out, it's already written in there that the seller will pay for a home warranty at closing, cost
I
of
love
whatever.
that.
It's just like a kind of an assumptive close.
I love that. So yeah, you're assuming the listing and the warranty. So I'm going to add that right on into this PowerPoint. Thanks, Dave. So when I did do my poll on Chatter of what's called caused our fall throughs, one of the people responded that they did have a fall through due to illness. Now, I don't know what that illness was, but we do have COVID-19 contingencies that we can use. They were literally written for IAR by our own Jim Scahill. So copy and paste these into your purchase agreement so that you've got that covered. One of our newer agents had a delay because of COVID, and it put her out of contract and she was scrambling. So you might not need it. I hope you don't. But gosh, put it in there because it could make the difference. In her case, there was a lot of earnest money involved. Could have been very painful. So use those contingencies and we hope you don't need them, but there they are. Anybody want to comment on that? All right, I'm going to move on. This is from Gina. Are you still on here, Gina Culp? She has got these brilliant emails all set up. I hope you're still here. And so she's got these little emails that are automatic. Congratulations, you got the house. Now what? Gina, are you on here? Okay, I lost her. She then informs her buyers as to the next steps. So she's built this into her systemized process to go out immediately when they got the house. That they need to order the inspection and they need to be there. Inspectors tell me that these fall throughs often occur because the buyer doesn't attend the inspection. And then when they get the report, they don't understand what they're looking at and they panic. They need to be there at the inspection. And if they're not there, you shouldn't go instead. Let your lender know and get any other paperwork into them that they might need in a timely manner. Don't go out and buy a car or a house full of furniture. Don't change jobs. She's got a beautiful little process that goes out right away. Then her follow-up is, we're getting close now, and she advises them on calling the title company to verify wiring instructions, putting the utilities in their name. We will have a re-inspect or a walkthrough, and remember to bring your driver's license to closing. So her little campaign is all set up to keep that buyer informed, to keep them on track, to keep them within timelines, and really just to keep them calm. I love it, and I think we should all do it. Is anybody else doing something like this?
Thanks to Deb Flowers, I have started doing that. She has a really good system set up, and I am jumping on that bandwagon. Thanks, Deb, for sharing.
Fantastic.
Hey,
Hey, Deb.
Amy,
Yes, Judy.
I actually do the previous one and I put the deadlines in there too, so that they know their deadlines for when we need to respond to the inspection, when they need to get their homeowner's insurance secured, making sure they have their application done on time according to the contract.
Oh, I love
Same.
that.
Yeah, dates.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing a lot of people are doing this. Kudos to all of you. Jen, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say I do that too. Yeah, and I'm all about saving drafts of emails, whether it's like setting title work up or stuff that needs to go to the lender or stuff that needs to go to the buyer or the seller. I believe in drafts. It saves so much time.
Someday those email drafts are going to save you more than just saving time. They're going to save you problems. So at the inspection, and this is kind of my husband's area of our business, I'm grateful for that, but be sure that your buyers attend. Be there for the recap. Now, some of my managers on the call might push back on this one, but I believe that you're going to respond better if you understand the problem and if you ask questions of the inspector. And I believe that your buyer appreciates you showing up for that. In fact, maybe expects you to. Now, if your manager is one who tells you not to do this, I defer to your manager. But I know what it is they're afraid of. Because it's happened. They're afraid that you're going to say, like, well, I wouldn't worry about a little bit of mold, or, don't worry about a 50-year-old boiler furnace. That's where you get into trouble. You're not the inspector. But if you can go and listen and learn and respond and support, I think you should be there. And just remind the buyer at this time. Now, remember, they're madly in love with their new home, and the inspector just burst that bubble for them. So it's really good for you to be there to gauge how they're doing. And then arrange to meet via Zoom, to Jan's point, to review the inspection with them. Comments on this? Anybody? All right. So when you're writing your response, ask your buyers to spend time carefully and thoughtfully reviewing the inspection, and then ask them what their concerns are. So our tendency is to want to jump in and say, you should be really upset about this furnace or roof or whatever. You don't know that their Uncle Fred isn't a roofer. Ask them what they're concerned about. This is their house. You can point out concerns that you have, certainly share your thoughts, but let's find out what their concerns are. And arrange, if you can, to get bids on major items such as roofs, crawl spaces, etc. Matt's really good about doing this. And what it does is it takes the fear factor out. And now you're dealing with facts instead of drama. And try to eliminate little things. I know, it's not a big deal to change the light bulb in the range hood, but good golly, a 15-cent item from Lowe's, all it does is burden down the seller and make them feel picked on. So maybe you can eliminate some of those. And then remind them, and this has happened to me, I'm guessing it's happened to you, that seller might be sitting on a really attractive backup offer, and they're looking for a reason to tip you over. So if it's something that you can do yourself or have done later, suck it up and buy the house. Comments on this one?
This is where it's really nice to go back to that document that I reviewed with the buyer about expectations, and even looking at the Indiana law. Of course, there's some wiggle room there. Of course, we know that, but it really does remind them to come back and think about what's really significant here versus just nitpicking.
And Kevin, I'm going to put that back into the category of going slow so you can go fast later on. That's what you've done up front. You've prepared them for this moment. So let's go back to what Kevin says. What does your purchase agreement say a defect is? It's a significant adverse effect on the value of the property. It would significantly impair the health or safety of future occupants, or if not repaired, removed, or replaced, would significantly shorten or adversely affect the expected normal life of the property. So Kevin's meeting with his buyer up front, they're discussing what a defect is, and they're actually signing a document that they understand that. So when you send, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you had finished your sentence.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
I do want to add something, and I'm really firm with my buyers on this. Remember, the inspection response, buyer's inspection response number 1 says, Buyer will, I'm paraphrasing, buyer will accept the house if the seller corrects the following conditions. The implication is if the seller says no, the buyer is no longer accepting the house. That's what that says. So I pose that to my buyers because, you know, we all get in this push come to shove moment. And I tell them, this is not a time to bluff. Are you telling me that if the seller won't fix the drippy faucet in the kitchen, you will not accept the house? Because that's the form you're asking me to fill out. We're going to tell the seller, unless you fix this, we no longer want the house. That is how that form's written. Okay. So then they go, oh no, I still want the house. If the seller says, no, I still want it, then don't ask me to write a false response. That's how we present that to our buyers. And it sounds gruff. I think handled appropriately, Deborah and I normally get away with that, but that's what I tell them. That is how the form is written.
I like that, Dave. It's strong. And I think it puts your buyer in the right frame of mind, you know, because up until now, the buyers had, you know, the sellers had all the power when they're looking at 20 offers. Now there's a change of power. The power goes to the buyer. At least that's what they believe. So now some of them might think, well, gosh, I paid 10,000 over list. I'm going to really stick it to the seller now, and I'm going to balance the scales of justice and get them to fix the leaky faucet and the door latch that doesn't work and the coffee stain by the kitchen counter, whatever. And what you're doing is you're shifting that completely and saying, so you want me to tell them you're not going to buy the house then if it has a leaky faucet. And
Correct.
that maybe fixes that problem of the buyer trying to, you know, get a pound of flesh from the seller since they paid over list.
That's part of your buyer consultation day one before you go out. It's much more digestible to them day one before they're actually in a transaction. But we're extremely strong on that. And consequently, I'm going to say half the time they accept the house as is. That's our goal, is about half the time.
So, you know, when you get that showing that those houses set up, or you get all your houses set up for your buyer on the BLC, that's the time to schedule this buyer in-office consultation. Don't jump up then and show them a house. You haven't done your job. And if you do that right, you're also gaining their loyalty and their relationship, and they'll use you instead of walking in an open house and say, well, somebody set me up a search on the MLS, but they're not really my agent. So let's do this in 2021. So when you send that inspection response over to the listing agent, send them the entire report with pictures. I guarantee you that seller has not been on the roof. So they don't know that there's, you know, a leak around the chimney. They haven't been in their crawl space. The seller has to have a reality check here, and the pictures are going to help you with that. Provide any bids you can get on major items. Matt has a really killer group of inspectors and vendors and people that will do us favors like this. And that can take a little bit of the sting out of it when you're sending something over that might be onerous. Remind the listing agent that any defects not repaired will have to be disclosed or repaired for the next buyer. You know, I've learned over the years that you can't always rely on the skill of the other agent. So if you fashion a really good email that you can send to them, sometimes they'll forward that right over to the seller, and you're literally dialoguing with the seller. So you don't have to rely upon the abilities of that other agent. I like to give the listing agent and the seller plenty of time to respond, because they might have an emotional reaction when they first get the response. So give them time to process it, give them time to get the facts. You know, don't give them 3 days to respond, give them a solid week. Yeah, somebody wants to weigh in on this. Who is it? Do I have somebody who wants to weigh in on this? All right. And to Dave's point, assure the listing agent that the buyer still wants the house. You know, over my career here at Carpenter, one thing I've learned is that everybody's keeping track of what's fair, what's not fair. I gave up on this, they gave up on that. I think if you keep that trust factor and you treat people fairly, you're probably going to get to closing. But it's when you've got that killer instinct that comes out, and, you know, one person's trying to get a pound of flesh from the other, you're in jeopardy. And when the relationship between the two agents is hostile, your transaction is in jeopardy. So remember, you might be doing another transaction with that agent in 2 or 3 months. So keep that relationship solid, and just try to keep in mind that people want to feel like they've been treated fairly, and keep reminding the buyer what they liked about the house. Revisit their motivation, revisit their pros list. Don't forget you said you wanted to be moved when your lease is up on March 1, that kind of thing. So here's some dialogue that's worked over the years. There is no perfect house. Not even a brand new house is going to be perfect. With a few repairs and some sweat equity, you'd have a nice investment here. Why don't we all just sleep on it and talk in the morning? That'll give you some time to process the seller's response. I find that this is one of the most important things, is not to let people react emotionally. Give them time. And if they need to blow off steam with you, let them. Don't take it personally. They're upset. Matt, I don't know if you're still on the call, but Kyle, he had to make a call to her and tell her that we had to cut down this ornamental cherry tree. And he already had 4 bids for her, and, was really, trying to take care of it for her. And she said, no, wait a minute. I need to be upset for a minute first. Just let me go ahead and be upset. And she said it right. Let them get that emotion out of the way so that they can be really clear on the other side and move towards making a good decision. Okay, same thing with the seller. If you've got the seller, go slow to go fast. Explain the current market and explain strategies. Remember, every seller is not going to be in this hot market. If they've got $1 million house, their average days on market could be years, not days. So prepare them for their market, their days on market, how to be competitive in their market, and come up with a strategy that works. If you can do a pre-listing inspection and make the repairs, you're going to have a smooth transaction. And that's not every seller, but a lot of them are going to want to do that in this environment because it is a competitive advantage. And then provide that inspection and receipts on the BLC. When you get an offer, tell them, hey, we've already done the repairs. You can go ahead and inspect, but we're selling the house as is. And then ask them to clean as if their life depended on it. Stage that home and order your preliminary title work and correct any problems right away. Preliminary title work is part of our job as a great seller's agent. Let's get that done. Does anybody want to comment on this? Add anything? Okay, how do we launch the listing? Well, what we're doing is using professional photos, drone shots, home tours. This is going to save the seller a lot of time because the buyer's going to be able to see the house online. We put a description under every single photo, and yes, it takes an entire day. It takes 8 hours. But again, we're providing clarity for the buyers. Provide any information that that buyer can get. Provide the survey, provide the inspection, repairs, updates, receipts, anything you've got, HOA documents. This is what a power listing agent does. There's all the information for the buyer. You're not second guessing whether you've sent the HOA docs, you've got it right there. And then go live on Friday with no showings until your open house. Let them review all that material, have all the facts. And then when they send you an offer, they've done it rationally as well as emotionally, and maybe they walked in and they had to make a quick decision, but they had time to process the homework. This creates an auction environment, but it allows for a rational as well as an emotional decision. Comments on this one? Okay, well, what we're doing when we get these multiple offers is we're creating an Excel spreadsheet, and we're putting a category for everything on that offer, from the down payment to the inclusions to the escalation clause. And then we're doing a net sheet for every single offer. So our seller gets to make a very well-informed decision and can compare in a rational way what each offer has to offer. Is anybody else doing this? Okay, then that allows them to prepare that, compare those offers objectively. And you can even get a calendar out to demonstrate all the inspection timeframes, closing, possession, etc. counsel your seller here to try to go back and accept 1 or 2 backup offers, or at least continue showing the house for backup, because then if the buyer tries to get a pound of flesh at the time of inspection, you can just move on to the next one. This is where the seller has the most control, so set them up to be successful here. Tell them how important it is to get that backup offer. Is anybody else doing that? Anybody? Okay.
Amy,
Gareth? Yeah, Judy.
It helps, especially in the inspection process. If you have a buyer that overbid on the property and then they get the inspection and want to nitpick it to death, you can remind the other agent that you have a backup offer. So they need to be careful on what they ask for on the inspection.
And Judy, I would take that one step further. We had an instance one time where a backup offer was 20,000 higher than our primary offer. So we wanted the buyer to write us a terrible inspection response, and they cooperated very well. So we just said bye-bye. And boy, our seller just loved that backup offer. So you could have a backup offer that's a darn sight better than your offer. So strategize with your buyer. On the contingency where there's another property that has to be sold, have you done the homework on this? What can you find out about the buyer of that property? Is their purchase contingent on a sale? How many dominoes are there? Because you could be looking at 5 or 6 dominoes. And where are they in the process? Are they using, have they gotten past the inspection? Have they gotten past the appraisal? How strong is their approval from the bank? And then look at this. If the buyer's using cash from the sale of their home, you know, maybe you need to see that purchase agreement, at least ask for it. And I know that's kind of a gutsy question, but how else are you going to know that that buyer is really going to be able to proceed, that they're going to have the funds to close? So you need some kind of verification that the funds will be there to close. Is there a way that buyer can qualify without selling their property? And are they willing to do it? So I always assume that the other agent needs my help, but I do this without really letting them know. So any dialogue that I can give them in an email, any reminders, anything that I want communicated to their seller, I'm going to carefully word that in a way that preserves their self-esteem and ego, and just assume that the seller is going to be reading it, because that's one way for you to dialogue directly with the seller. Anybody who's on this call today is probably going to be a more skillful agent than you might be running into out there. So just assume they need your help and do it while saving their ego. On inspection day, help your seller to be ready for that inspection. They should have that HVAC system cleaned and serviced. They should prepare for a showing, because now we're selling that house to the inspector. So prepare your seller to be out of the house for several hours, make sure all areas are accessible, and get that house show ready for the inspector. And then make sure that the seller gets to see the whole report and the photos, and let them blow. Step back and let them be upset. It is okay. They're not mad at you, but they can't make a rational decision when they're still processing their emotions. And then your job is to present the solutions on the other side of that upset. If you can get bids ahead of time so you can keep things factual and help with names of contractors and bids, I think Matt does such a great job of this. He'll get 5 or 6 bids if he has to, but he'll get the very best bid he can for that seller, and then he'll work on really saving them some money. If you need to get a second opinion on something like a repair, bring in your own expert and see if the inspector really knows what they're talking about. Remind the seller that he's going to have to fix anything. He'll have to disclose anything he doesn't fix, and that he's got a bird in the hand. And then try to give this buyer the feeling that they are winning something here, whatever it is. I guess what I'm saying is throw them a bone so that they feel like they did get something. If you
Hey,
can help
Amy?
this. Yeah, Deb.
One thought on that, my thought on that is, a lot of times, like you said, a lot of agents throw in and nitpick the little things. And so when the seller sees the response,
it's this big long list. But if you go item by item, a lot of times it's a $2 or $3 fix, and it just
Right.
isn't as bad as what it first appears. So going through that list with the seller and saying, okay, well, we could do this for such and such, right down to electrical outlet covers, those are 20 some cents. And it all becomes doable for them, and they calm down.
And they do calm down, yeah. And if you can kind of lump items together like electrical, and my electrician, told me on the phone that these items, roughly $125, et cetera. So yeah, good point, Deb. Thank you. And then help the seller get the repairs in a timely fashion. And this is really important. The second you get that repair made, send that receipt over to the buyer. It shows them that you are acting in due diligence, that their trust is being upheld, that you're acting in good faith. And then, you're not running around at the last minute before the closing looking for the receipts. So send them over right away. And get warranties when able and send those over. And then if the seller's providing a check at closing to the vendor or decreasing the price in lieu of repairs, be sure you get that amendment over to the title company. They need that information to prepare for the closing. So just keep this in mind when you're doing something creative about repairs that the title company needs to know. So the winning dialogue for sellers, Mr. Seller, if we lose this buyer, you'll either have to make repairs or disclose the defect. Number two, you'd be in effect buying your house back for the cost of these repairs. Again, back to the bird in the hand. And number four, we've got time. Why don't I get us some bids and we'll think about this for a few days. So with the appraisal, I think Mike already talked about this, but what Matt and I do is we put everything on the BLC, the inspection, the repairs, any updates that they've made. We've got it right on there for those buyers agents to look at. And we show up for the appraisal every single time. And we just are sure that they're doing a thorough job while we're there. I've had them call me later and say, now, how many bathrooms did that house have? I wanted to be like, what? You must not have even gone into the house. And we give them our comps that support our price in a sealed envelope. And I will small talk. We give them all the purchase agreements with the names Sharpied out so they can't see the names. And then we're giving them all the receipts and all the repairs and the information on the seller's disclosure and how old the roof is. Look, if they like you and you give them the data that they need, they're going to help you out. They're going to find that extra $1,000 or $1,500. I'm telling you, it worked for us every single time in 2020. Is anybody else doing this? Anybody? Okay, well, here's a good one that I really like. Ask the buyer's agent to notify you when the value has been established. You want to keep your finger on the pulse of this. So they can give you a call and say, hey, we got the appraisal back, everything's fine. Because I guarantee you, your seller is worried. If your appraisal comes back short, you've got some different fixes here. You can review it for accuracy. Are they missing any comparable properties? Send those to the buyer to send back to the lender. And then begin a dialogue with your buyer about what their options are. Title work, you really want to order that preliminary title work. Make sure all the owners are on the listing contract, purchase agreement. Review it, ask questions, clear up any cloud on the title as soon as possible. Be sure you review the survey with the buyer. We've had lawsuits on this, guys. So be sure you're sitting down with them and having them initial that survey that they understand it. Are the taxes up to date? Are there liens or encumbrances? What about the HOA dues? Is that up to date? And then this is a big one. I like to keep my finger on the pulse of everything by staying in touch with all parties. I guarantee you your client is feeling stressed, whether you've got the buyer or the seller. So just be sure you're reaching out and touching them and making sure that everything is going along so you don't get any surprises. Over communicate with the title company, providing any amendments, addendums, and receipts and wires. Just make sure you're not going to have any delays. If you run into some buyer's remorse, Get face to face with that buyer, ask them questions, and then listen and let them blow. Tell them what's on your mind. Remind them that there is no perfect home. So if you revisit your original motives for wanting to move, you can ask them what you can do to help them, offer them solutions, talk to the listing agent about solutions. I've got a story here if you've got time. This is one of my favorite stories because Dave Cavanis was listening to me and he came around the corner and told me what he thought about my phone call. My seller was an analytical. He found out at the inspection that there was mold in the crawl space of the house he was buying, and he called me hysterical. He was literally hysterical. I can't buy this house. My wife is allergic to mold. You've got to get me out of this deal. You've got to get me out. I can't buy a house with mold. And I said, Craig, don't worry. We're not going to make you buy a house with mold. Well, Cavanis came flying around the corner. You can't tell people that you can get them out of a deal. Well, if I would have had to hire an attorney, I would have had him hire an attorney. But what he needed to hear at that time is that he was not going to be pressured into buying a house that was unhealthy for his wife. The second that I told him that, he took a deep breath audibly and he calmed down. And I said, okay, Craig, how about this? How about we have Alpine meet us out at the house and tell us if there's any safe way to handle this situation. And then based on that information, we'll decide where to go from here. Well, he agreed. And Alpine did a beautiful job. They told him they could make the house safe for his wife. They told him that they could provide a warranty for their service. And Craig went ahead and bought the house. But if I would have said anything other than, we're not going to make you buy a house that's unhealthy for your wife, I don't know what he would have done. He would have come unglued. He was that upset. So we've got to defuse the situation, absorb the upset, and then we can make a rational decision on the other side. And that is my best example of that. Put your ego aside. Remember, this transaction is not about you. It's about your client and what's in their best interest. So sometimes we get all caught up in what we think should happen or what we think is fair. It's not our house. We're not buying it. We're not selling it. We got to take care of what our clients and what they want. Your job is to be the step down transformer, stay calm, and help your clients do the same. And that's all I have for us today. So let me ask you, what do you think? What would we add to this? What did I miss? Comments, questions?
Do we get CE credit for this, Amy? This was very good.
Thank you, Bob. And no, I haven't submitted it to the commission yet, but I'm planning on it because I want to add in some of the great things you all told me today. The main thing here is remember that your job here is that it's not about you, it's about your client, and just hold their hands all the way through, realize that they're under stress, and that's your job, you broker deals. Should I add anything else to this, anybody? Okay, well, I'm going to leave you with a thought for the day, and that is go slow at first so you can go fast later on. If you're not doing that, you will have problems down the road. So build your protection against fall throughs into the very beginning of your deal with your seller and your buyer, and you'll get to the closing without sleepless nights and without angst. Find your word for the year and live it. And that's my thought for the day. I'm here if you need me. I'm going to send out Mike Woods